You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 102. My ultimate system to whip your bottom line into shape. With our special guest, Sarah Laufer, CPA. My CPA. If you are an entrepreneur who wants actionable solutions to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. My goal today is for you to discover my simple system for bookkeeping so you can get a better handle on your finances, make informed business decisions, and go into the tax season saying, I got this. In fact, if you just barely got out of this last tax season and we're not saying, I got this, then stay tuned. I'm looking forward to bringing this episode to you because we are going to cover the root cause of your tax season stress, my step-by-step bookkeeping process, literally step-by-step. I'm pulling back the curtains on my very own checklist that I use every single month. The most important task in your other bucket, what will happen if you don't keep your finances in check, some tips from my very own CPA, and so much more. So let's dive right in and get straight to it. This episode is going out 1 week after tax day, and that is not by accident. My assistant and I were talking about, what topics to bring to you, and this one hit home because we're right in the midst of tax season. And we purposely did not release this on tax day because I think that you needed a little breather after maybe just getting through tax season. And what I want is for you to not repeat what this year looked like for you if you struggled, if you weren't like, yeah, I got this, or tapping on your CPA's shoulder in January saying, I am ready to do my taxes. If that was not your reality, and perhaps you've been living a much different reality year after year after year, then this episode is for you. I actually went and asked my CPA if she can share a quick tip for us in this episode. And she not only said yes, but she said, yes, how about 7 a.m.? She's Eastern, so 7 a.m. my time. And when she showed up, she was fully prepared with like 5 solid tips, which you will hear shortly. But I want you to think about that for a moment. It is April 15th when we're recording this, and she was ready to do a podcast interview. So that is a huge testament to her business, but it also is a huge testament to how she's supporting her clients. Like, she doesn't have a bunch of fires to put out today. So if you are currently experiencing anxiety, stress, overwhelm, if your taxes and finances have been like the scary monster in the closet that gets bigger and bigger and bigger because you won't open up the closet, then I want you to listen up. I am completely passionate about this topic, and you may be asking like, well, why are we talking taxes and finances and bookkeeping on a productivity podcast? And here is my reason. Because when you ignore this, when you let this get overwhelming, it will trickle in and stress you out in all aspects of your life, personal and professional. In fact, I have seen it time and time again, client after client, that when this area of their business or personal life goes unresolved, I guess is a good word to say, or untamed, maybe another good word, is that it seeps out everywhere. I don't want that for you. You know that we're here because we want less stress in our businesses and more profitability. And what better conversation to have than about our bookkeeping and our taxes? When we talk on this show about productivity, And if you're new to this show, I'm going to invite you to my definition. And if you like it, it's my gift to you. Productivity is investing your best time into your best activities. And I define those best activities as a business owner in 4 buckets. And I'm going to share briefly what those 4 buckets are. Actually, there's 5 buckets, but 4 buckets are your high value activities. And then if you want more details about it, I'm going to tell you where you can go listen to an episode that's all about that. So the first bucket is marketing and visibility. The second bucket is sales. The third bucket is servicing the client. The fourth bucket is leadership. Those are the 4 buckets that you should be spending a majority of your time in to grow your business. Now, there is a 5th bucket, which is the other bucket, and that bucket either can be neglected or we can actually find ourselves living in that bucket at the expense of the first 4 high value activity buckets. Finances fall in the other bucket. But it's really a direct line because when your finances are taken care of, which every business needs to handle their finances in what I believe an organized and effective way, it does actually relate to your profitability because you can strategize and be proactive and look for ways to save money, and you can look for smart ways to invest money, and you know when to grow your business. And so if I'm coming to you talking about, okay, here's a way you can delegate, this is a way you can build your team, I can share all the strategies in the world with you, but if you don't know your numbers, you don't know when you're ready to hire. You don't know if you can afford it. You don't know what that's going to do to your business. So your finances are so, so important. Another thing that I share in my trainings with my clients and when I do workshops is that your CPA should be like your best friend. They should be a strategic partner in your business because your CPA is going to show you how to be smart about, reducing your tax liability. Okay. And in today's episode, we're talking to my CPA about strategizing and reducing your taxes and how to be prepared for that and when you're ready for a CPA. But we're really talking about bookkeeping, and oftentimes those are 2 different services, and you should probably have 2 different people helping you with that. Now, when I say help you with that, this is bookkeeping can be outsourced, but before it's outsourced, it actually can stay internal with a very simplistic process. And that is what I'm going to pull the curtains back on you with. I am talking to my CPA who handles taxes, but I do all my own bookkeeping. Now, another reason why I'm bringing this to you is because I would say, with no exaggeration, between 50 to 60% of my one-on-one clients, so like my high-end, one-on-one coaching clients, owe the IRS a ton of money. Not a little bit. I'm talking a lot of money. And some don't even know how much money because they're behind in their taxes and filing. And so this stress actually shows up, and oftentimes is something that I'm working with my clients on how to tackle something that has become so overwhelming, so big because it's so many years of doing stuff that very few people, I believe, really, really enjoy doing, which is the numbers and the detailed work behind the computer. This is not a skill set that a lot of people love, but there are people out there that absolutely love it. And if that is, and we're going to talk about what that looks like to outsource. But even if you outsource some of the bookkeeping, you ultimately still have things that you need to do as the business owner. So what I'm looking to do here is save you the time that you are putting till the very end. So let's just say, well, maybe you filed an extension, right? And so now it's lingering. Or maybe you absolutely hit your April 15th deadline, but it was at the expense of days and days, hours upon hours of investing to get a year's worth of bookkeeping caught up. And then maybe you just pulled it all together and really were not categorizing things correctly or to the best that you could because you're kind of not sure why you spent that money here or there or everywhere. When your bookkeeping is done on a regular basis, it allows you to utilize it as a tool to make smart strategic business decisions in your business. You will know if you can hire and delegate in your business. You'll know if you can afford to hire a coach. You'll know when you need to be focusing more on sales. The data that comes from your finances is so valuable. So if you're not currently in the habit of regularly knowing where you're at with regards to revenue and profitability and where are your expenses going, then stay tuned because I have a great checklist I'm going to cover with you today. But before we dive into my own personal checklist, I want you to hear from my own CPA, Sarah Laufer, CPA. And she's going to share with us 5 golden nuggets on tips to get your finances in order in your business. Hello, Sarah. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am so good. And I'm so excited to have you here. And I have got to say, before you share all of your nuggets and wisdom, it is 7 a.m. Pacific Standard on April 15th when I'm talking to my CPA. This is freaking amazing. This is just a testament to how you run your business. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I am one tired lady. I can tell you that.
Yes. And I am just so grateful that you said yes. And I wanted you to come on and, you are my CPA and we just began working together this year. And I reached out to you after having a not so great experience with my previous CPA. And one thing that I always say is like, oh my gosh, like you need to be best friends with your CPA. Like we work so hard to make money. You've got to be best friends with your CPA to keep your money, right? And stay in your lane. So I am excited to introduce you to our Productivity Straight Talk listeners. And Sarah, I've asked for you to share some tips for our listeners. And so I will let you take it away.
Great. Thank you. So I am a CPA and I've been a big fan of your podcast for a long time. And I have been listening to productivity tips from you for the last year or so. So it's exciting that we actually get to work together now. So my tips to try to keep your business finances organized as a small business owner are really designed to help just reduce the stress and anxiety about taxes. So taxes can be a very overwhelming situation for people. But if you are on top of it and you have an ongoing, thoughtful relationship with your accountant who you talk to throughout the year and you have a plan in place, then taxes are actually one of the easiest parts of the year because you just kind of already know what you're up against and you sign a paper and you're done.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a few tips that other businesses can use to try to reduce the stress and anxiety around taxes for themselves. So the first one is to keep a separate bank account for your business. So don't intermingle your business and your personal. It's really confusing when you go to do taxes and you don't even know where to start because your credit card has all your personal shopping and all your business shopping and you have no idea what you spent money on. And your accountant goes, I need a P&L. And you say, what's that? I don't have one.
Right.
So my first tip is to kind of keep your lives separate. Keep a personal checking account for your rent, your mortgage, your groceries, and life, and another credit card for your business, and a bank account and credit card for all your business stuff.
Okay, awesome. So I told you I was going to talk to a couple of your points and, I will be sharing later in the episode how many accounts I have. So I'm probably on the over extreme because I practice profit first, but I've always had a separate account early on. And, the more I got into my business and helping and getting behind the scenes with business owner after business owner, I am not shocked that's your first tip any longer because it is so common that small business owners just use it as like a slush fund and they really have no idea or predictability or even data of what they're using their money on because it's all commingled. So great tip number 1.
Absolutely. And with that leads into the second one is, well, what is your P&L? What is your taxable number? Well, guess what? The best tip is to really use some type of system to keep track of it that is not Excel, that is not the back of an envelope. I am a big believer in QuickBooks. The system works really well for a lot of my clients. I run my business off of that. I know you run your business off of that. There's other systems out there that people really like. There's Wave, which is actually free, which is pretty great too. The reason why I love these systems is because it's actually super intuitive. You link your bank account, your separate business bank account, and your separate business credit cards to the systems, and they track all your expenses and revenue for you. So all you have to do at the end of the year is you say, here, Sarah, here's my link to QuickBooks, and guess what? I can go in and I pull the P&L myself. You don't even, how we work together, you don't even give me any numbers. I just went in and I grabbed the numbers myself from your QuickBooks.
Yes.
So by doing that, it really works. And then you also, what can do is I can say, Amber, how'd your numbers look this year versus last year? You can easily quickly say, wow, 2018 was up 25% over 17. And you can look at a comparative year over year. You can use these systems to track your spending. You can say, how much did I spend on Amazon for the last year? And you can run reports of how much you spent for any vendor you want. And what I use it for a lot is I do my billing out of there. So I bill all my clients out of QuickBooks, and that's how I can track all my open receipts, my receivables. I can see my billing history for all of my clients and how much they paid year over year. And so I use the whole suite of QuickBooks. It's really easy to use. The problem is you have to have it set up correctly. So what I see a lot of business owners doing is they just go online, they get QuickBooks, they try to set up themselves. But if it's not set up right, the information's not there. So you only get out of it what you put into it.
Right.
So my tip is use a system. It might be hard to get it set up at first, but once it's set up, it makes your life so much easier.
Yes. I knew that it was possible. Again, I didn't have a great experience with my last CPA. He was kind of archaic. And so when you were like, all right, hey, just give me access to your QuickBooks and I'll get in and get anything I need, I was like, wow, this feels like such VIP service. This was amazing.
It's fun. And I have to say, your books were great. They were super clean. You obviously know what you're doing. So when I took a look at your QuickBooks, I was like, hey, this girl's on top of her books. I could tell.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I do take pride in it, but I also take pride in just having a process, which I will go into more detail after we're done with these tips. But I do not I feel like business is stressful enough. I don't want to lay over financial stresses or being months and months, years behind on data entry or, all of the stuff that happens to so many. And I know firsthand, and I just purposely have a process so that they stay nice and neat so that when you said, hey, I can jump in, I didn't have to scramble. I didn't have to, put a whole day, 2 days, 3 days aside to try and get it so that you could even see anything in there. So thank you for that.
That's actually, and I listen to your podcast a lot, and you do talk about that a lot. And it is so important it just takes about an hour to a month once you have your processes in place. And to go with that, what happens a lot when I get new clients is maybe they haven't been using QuickBooks for years. And guess what? You're not going to start in December and do a whole year's worth. The best time to start is actually right now. And to start clean for 2019, yes, go back to January. You're only 3 or 4 months back. Go back to January, start getting QuickBooks, start getting a system in place now, because it's much easier to do it now for the last 4 months than it is in December or January to do it for the last 12 months. That's when it gets overwhelming and high stress, because if you think about that volume of transactions that you're dealing with, it's much easier when you have a smaller volume.
Yes. And that is why the timing of this episode is dropping the week after taxes, because my team and I thought, oh my gosh, this would be so good to drop on April 15th, right? It's a Monday. And that only was for a second. And then we were like, no, most people are still stressing till probably midnight tonight. And they need a little breathing room after the trauma of probably getting through tax season. So we're actually dropping this the week after so they can take a breath and then recoup and make their game plan to make it different.
Great. The next tip is on top of staying on top of your bookkeeping is also just stay on top of your taxes. So what I see a lot with new clients or with certain clients is that if you don't stay on top of your estimate taxes, there's a little bit of what I call the snowballing effect. So when you are a W-2 employer, if you work for a corporation, if you make $100,000, you only get $70,000 deposited into your checking account, right? Because the government's already taking out all their costs. When you're self-employed, it's all on you to pay your taxes yourself, which makes it painful, right? It sucks to see that money in your account and then have to part ways with it and see it go away. But what happens is when you don't stay on top of it is, say that first year you launch your business, you really don't make much money because you're really just trying to get your feet on the ground. So you don't have to worry about taxes. And all of a sudden in year 2, your business takes off and you make $100,000. And you spent all that money that you made already because you were excited to start a new business. You had some old debt that you had to take care of. And you spend it all, and all of a sudden it's time to do taxes, and you have a tax bill of $25,000. and you have no money to pay that bill. So you go into a tax debt. And then in year 3, when you actually are making more money again, you spend all that year's money paying off last year's taxes. And this continuously happens and happens. So what I like to do with my clients, I like to stay on top of that. So that way at the end of the year, you have a clean slate. You have no tax debt, and that you're always going to stay on top of your taxes. People are really intimidated by quarterly taxes. It's actually not a tax filing. It's really just sending a check to the IRS. That is what a quarterly tax is. So people think that they have to fill out a whole tax report, a whole tax filing. That's not the case. It's really just sending money to the IRS to stay on top of it. It's a lot easier when you file your taxes and you owe no money than when you file taxes and you owe them $30,000.
Yeah.
It's just another piece of the puzzle to take the stress and anxiety away from this, and it's a way to stay on top of it.
Okay, Sarah, so I have a quick question that's just coming up for me, and I think it may come up for the listeners. It's not a filing, but how do you estimate? Like, do you have to talk to your CPA each time? Is it a predetermined time? Like, how do you know how much money to write the IRS? Because I think that maybe the unknowing is what keeps people from actually doing it. They don't really know how much they should send.
That's actually a really great point. So there's 2 ways to do that. If you are an established business and you make the same amount of money every year, approximately, we give and take a little bit, then that's really easy, right? You know what your tax bill is going to be, and you take your total taxes and you divide it by 4 and you write a check each quarter. If you're a new business, or if you have a business that fluctuates greatly, or one year you might do great and one year you might be down, then what I do with my clients is, look, I have access to their QuickBooks, right? So it's a matter of just going in and saying, you had a great quarter, here's what I think you should send. So it's a matter of having that relationship. I love to touch base with my clients about 3 to 4 times a year to have those conversations about how they're doing with their business. Are we expecting a really good year? Are we expecting a really down year? And that's what I mean by staying on top of your taxes, because you do have to work with an accountant on that. But if you have a standard business and you know what you owe, then what I do a lot is I set those payments up quarterly. So when we file taxes, so say you're a business that you've been established for a while, when you file your taxes, I automatically send all 4 quarters of estimate payments with your e-filing. So that way it's mindless. You don't have to even worry about it.
Okay.
But that doesn't work for every business, right? Because not a lot of businesses have steady income like that.
Right.
So it really depends on how your business is set up and how you want to manage it. But it does get overwhelming, right? And so you do have to kind of, go back to step 1, if you have your accounts, if you have your QuickBooks, quarterly taxes comes next, because then it's all in line.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. All right, what's your next tip?
Next tip is, don't be scared to outsource. So I get a lot of clients who call me crying. I'm a business owner and I'm supposed to know how to do this, but I don't. So listen, I happen to have gone to school. I have a degree in accounting. I have a CPA license. I do know how to do this. And I do not know how to do graphic design. I don't know how to be a productivity specialist. I am not a doctor. So we all have our little niches. And just because you are a business owner does not mean that automatically you inherently have to know how to do your bookkeeping and your accounting and your own taxes and everything that comes with running a business, right? So we all outsource to build our websites, right? Because it's not worth all of our time to kind of figure out how to use Squarespace and do all the stuff. So maybe some of us outsource our website development. The same goes with this, right? When you develop that relationship with your accountant, and they can be your partner through all of this, and they can hold your hand. And just because you're a business owner does not mean that you inherently have to know exactly how to do all your accounting and taxes. And that's what the professionals are for. So I always tell my clients, I'm like, look, I could never do what you do. You could never do what I do. And that's why we're both in the business world together, because we use each other. We pay each other to do things.
Yeah. Hey, Sarah, I want to just talk to that point just a little bit. One is I have found that I have given many clients permission to outsource this. For some reason, a lot of people have the belief like this is something they should hold on to. And I'm not sure why. My gut reaction is saying, well, I'm not making enough money to justify outsourcing it. Or variations of that story. But what I have also found is even if they are, let's just say one issue is that they don't know how to do it. Like it's a skill thing. So yes, outsource it. But I've also found that there's quite a few that have the ability and skill set, but there's such a mental block and avoidance of doing their money and doing their taxes that it's something that never gets done. And so it lingers over them like month after month, year after year. So I've seen for a couple reasons why it is so valuable and important to outsource this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's a lot of people, they look at their business, there's things that you just don't want to spend money on, right? Like you would say, well, why should I spend X amount of money each month on this if I know I can do it myself?
Right.
And that's justifiable. Like I feel the same way about things in my business. And I look at other people who I pay and I look at my business software. It's like, what can you do yourself and what do you need to outsource? You look at that across the board. And I'm not saying, and there are a lot of businesses who do it on their own. You do it on your own, right? And you do a great job at it. But that doesn't mean everyone can and everyone has to. So It really depends on the person. It depends on their brain. Are they like a right brain or a left brain? And it depends on their time value of money. It depends on all those factors of if they can manage it. And if you can't manage it, and then it snowballs and it leads to this really stressful time in your life, then that's a signal that says, maybe I can't do this. Okay. But if it's someone where you have a process in place and you do it every month and on top of it, absolutely, then you're golden. Like ride the wave. You got it.
Right. And so just to be clear, this is two separate things. This is accounting and then it's taxes. And so I do the accounting portion. I stay on top of it monthly, but I definitely do not touch the taxes and the strategy and that side of it. And so that is what you specialize in. And I want to be clear, do you do accounting as well, or does your firm do accounting, or is this traditionally something that is outsourced to two separate professionals?
So that depends on each business model. There are some accounting firms who do both. I prefer it to be two separate things. I really focus on the tax strategy side of it, but obviously I do a lot of bookkeeping for a handful of clients. I don't do it for all of my clients. So it's a different skill set. It's a different pay scale as well. So you should not be paying CPA rates for bookkeeping.
Right.
And so there are some companies though who do both. And there is a value add into that. That is not something that I do as my firm because I really try to focus on the business strategy side of it and not the actual bookkeeping side of it.
Yeah. And I totally get it. So you're great at the strategy. I just wanted to clarify that because if someone's thinking, okay, great, Amber, I'm going to listen to all of, your process, but I still don't want to do it at the end of the day. I want to give them the resources like, well, who do they go to? So really, if you're not looking at doing your accounting, first go to your CPA. If that's not something they do or their firm does, ask for a referral. I'm sure you guys work hand in hand together. And if they don't have a referral, you're really looking at hiring two professionals. So that was great information, Sarah. Thank you.
Yes. And the bookkeeper and the CPA actually do work together a lot as well. So they intertwine. So depending on what your relationship is with both those people, I do work with a lot of other bookkeepers as well.
Okay. Excellent.
During that time. Yes.
Excellent.
And then my very last tip is receipts. So my last stress-inducing piece is people are always like, what do I do with my receipts? I literally had one client this year walk into my office, no joke, with a shoebox with a hole cut out at the top that said insert here. And they would come home every day and insert their receipts into a shoebox. I loved it.
It's a process,
and they brought it to me and I was like, yes. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? They're like, I don't know. What am I supposed to do with this? And I was like, well, I don't want your receipts. So the big question always is what do you do with receipts, right? And so as a CPA, I don't want your receipts. It is your responsibility to kind of keep track of your receipts. If you are using all the systems that I just kind of mentioned, your separate bank account, your QuickBooks, at the end of the day, you have to keep receipts only in the case that you get a tax audit. Okay, so if all your money is going through your checking account and your credit card account, then your receipts are already being captured within QuickBooks, right? So it's not the old school ways. You don't need receipts to do data entry. So your receipt is just proof of purchase. So I do have some clients right now who are going through an audit, a business audit, right? A Schedule C business audit. So when you show a large loss for a business, it raises a red flag and there could potentially be an audit. So clients who get audited, the IRS wants transactional receipts. They do not want a credit card statement. Because you can go to Best Buy and we all know anything we can buy at Best Buy. We all know what we can buy on Amazon. And if you go to Best Buy and you're like, well, here's my credit card receipt for $500 at Best Buy. And they're like, great, what'd you buy? Well, you can tell them whatever you want, right? Because your credit card receipt only says Best Buy. They want the transaction receipt that shows what you have. So my best approach to just make this whole process easier is I tell my clients, look, you only need receipts in case of an audit. So yes, you do need them, but don't drown in receipts. Don't have this overbearing wallet that's stuffed with paper. So my approach for receipts is most of my receipts come electronically through email because that's how I do a lot of my spending for my business. So I have a folder in my email that just says receipts. And every time I get an invoice, I literally just tag it for receipts and it automatically gets filtered into that folder. So I know that if I got audited, a majority of my receipts are already going to be in there. I do not take the time to attach my receipts to my line item in QuickBooks. It's not worth it. I know that item isn't end up in QuickBooks because I paid for it with my business account. So it's just a matter of me keeping my receipt for everything from like my monthly Adobe cost to my monthly Zoom cost to all the kind of computer receipts that I get. I never delete them. I put them in an email. Then for my paper receipts, what I do and what I tell my clients to do, I don't pay for these fancy receipt apps or anything along those lines. I use Evernote, which is a free app on your phone, and it takes a picture of your receipt. So if I'm out, say you and I go out for dinner, and we're at the restaurant and I pay, I literally take my receipt, I take my pen out of my bag, I write Amber 2018 taxes, what we discussed, take a picture of the receipt, and I leave the receipt at the table. And I can always go back to my Evernote and I can type in Joe's Restaurant and it does an OCR search and it will actually find the receipt for you in your phone.
Oh my gosh,
one of the
that's
apps
so
that
cool.
I love. Yeah, so that's one of the apps I love. So it's kind of bad though. Like right now, I actually have to go to Target to make a return later, right? Because I actually have time to go shopping now. It's April 15th. And so I literally can go into I don't keep any receipts. So personal too. So I just go to my phone, I type Target in, and it finds every picture that I've taken in my Evernote that has the word Target, and it will pull up all my receipts from Target. So I never have to keep any receipts. So I never have receipts in my wallet. And it's just a mindless way to do things. So you really don't need to drown in receipts. You don't need to keep shoe boxes of receipts in your house. You don't need to go through receipts during tax time. As long as everything's being captured in your separate accounts and in QuickBooks, you can see how all of these points are related to each other, right? That is my 5 tips of how to reduce stress and anxiety about taxes.
Oh my gosh, you nailed it, Sarah. Thank you so much. So I would just like to share just a little bit about my experience with you as well. First of all, you do not live near me. So if anyone's listening and you're like, oh, I don't have someone in my area, like that does not need to stop you in this day and age. So I'm in Las Vegas and Sarah's in New Jersey. And I was on the hunt early last year, right about this time, to switch over my CPA for the following year. And I interviewed several CPAs and I just really, really connected with you and your philosophy. And so I chose to hire you. And then we did a couple strategy sessions throughout the year to make sure I was on point. And then when taxes came, it was so seamless. To me, it was so easy. So I just wanted to say thank you and also share that if you're looking for a CPA, don't just look within the borders of your town or your city or your state. You can find it anywhere, including reaching out to Sarah.
Thank you. And I have implemented a lot of your tips. And so I also use a lot of your productivity tips to stay connected with my clients who are not nearby.
Oh my gosh.
I use Zoom, right? So you and I met through Zoom, through both of our accounts, I think. And I use online scheduling and I use all those tips that you have talked about during your podcasting. And I've implemented those a lot in my practice as well. So it makes remote sessions just work seamlessly. Again, it doesn't matter where you are as long as you have the technology in place to kind of make it work and make it efficient.
Yes. And when I was on the receiving end of it, I was literally smiling ear to ear when I'd get your templated emails with a little customization. I was like, oh, I bet that's what she's doing. There's no way she could write such a great email to every one of her clients. Like you had an email, and I'm assuming, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like you had an email for every different type of situation. You customized it a little bit. It had, all of the do this is what you can expect next. And it just really, from the client's perspective, felt like you had everything under control.
Yep, I do. I use email I use a software that does email templating. And it has workflows built in. So like the last email when I hit you file a return, it automatically brings up this drafted email that's already addressed to you. And I just have to like write over 1 or 2 sentences to kind of personalize it.
Oh my
gosh.
A
lot of those emails are templated. I spent a long time getting it set up, but once it was set up, it's been an amazing time saver. And so my whole system's all integrated, in a way that really works for my business.
Okay, that's awesome. So I feel like we could do tips forever. But Sarah, if our listeners want to reach out to you and find out more, how do they do that?
Yes, of course. So you can find me on my website, which is www.laufercpa.com. That's L as in Larry, A-U, F as in Frank, E-R, CPA.com. And from there, you can just reach out through my website and we can set up a phone call to kind of chat and talk about what you're looking for and if I'm the right person to work with you on. So, it has to be a relationship with your accountant. It's very personal, right? So you have to connect in a way that works for you. A lot of my clients, I work with a lot of women. I also work with men, but I do work with a lot of women business owners. I work with a lot of families. My clients tend to be in their 30s and 40s. And that's kind of also where I am in life. And so, you kind of attract people where the same way you are. I'm also a small business owner, right? So I hired my first employee this year. And so I'm also in the same boat as a lot of my clients. So it's kind of fun to all work together in that way.
Yeah.
Today is April 15th. It is tax day, so I will be taking vacation the next week or so, but then I will be back at it after that.
Yeah. When we were actually scheduling this session, you're like, I can do Monday. And I was like, that's absurd. Like, I could not even believe I didn't even want to ask. And here we are. It's April 15th. And you have buttoned up, I would assume, most of everything that you need to button up. And I think that that's a huge testament to how prepared. I know you had me very prepared. Like, we had met at the end of Q3. Like, it was very clear what was expected to happen when taxes came around. And so I think that if you're that proactive with all your clients while you are super busy because of the quantity, it's not that you can't do a podcast interview for Productivity Straight Talk on April 15th. So way to go, Sarah.
Thanks, Amber. I appreciate it.
Have a great day. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thanks, Amber. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh, wasn't that a great, I was so surprised. I thought if I could just grab like 10 minutes of her time this week, that would be amazing. But she was so generous and definitely gave us a lot of great information. So I want to piggyback on that and just share mine. So first of all, if you have not already done so, I would recommend listening to the episode Productivity plus Profitability, Why Your Business Needs Both. Okay. You don't need to stop listening here, but that is a great sister episode. So it's episode 35, Productivity plus Profitability, Why Your Business Needs Both. I go in deep into the 4 buckets as well as the other bucket in that episode. And we also talk about why we need profitability. Another episode that complements this one is episode 70 with Mike Michalowicz. So Mike Michalowicz has several amazing books, but one book that absolutely changed my business and honestly my life, and you'll hear about that in the episode, is the Profit First book. I subscribe to the methodology of Profit First. I have now for a little over 2 years, and that is shaping how I go about doing my bookkeeping. So you'll hear me reference it, and you do not need to subscribe to the methodology of Profit First, but should you want to, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. And I also recommend listening to the interview. So I handle all my finances in one 1-hour session and one 90-minute session a month. And so what I do is I schedule a block of time specifically called Profit First on the 10th and the 25th of the month. If it lands on a weekend, so if it's Saturday, I'll move it to Friday. If it's Sunday, I move it to Monday, and some variation of that depending on my schedule. But for the most part, it's generally always landing on the 10th and the 25th. And I do that for a few reasons, but really it's because bills can tend to be due on the 15th or the 1st of the month. So this allows me to chip away at the tasks that it takes, such as paying your bills and yourself and your employees and things like that twice a month. So what I just kind of skipped over, but is the most pivotal, most important part of this entire thing is not necessarily the checklist I'm sharing with you, but that I am making the time. I am scheduling the time on my calendar and not negotiating with it. Because a checklist alone is not going to get you there. Making the time accompanied with a checklist to move through it effectively and efficiently is where the gold is. So this does take a time investment. But if you do this twice a month on a very regular basis, as you heard in my interview with Sarah, I literally told her I was ready and she logged into my accounting program and pulled out everything she needed. I did absolutely nothing in my business this year with regards to last year's taxes. And so I was ready. All right, so let's just start with, Sarah had also referenced QuickBooks. I use QuickBooks myself. I use QuickBooks Online. I actually highly recommend it, but there are a lot of accounting and bookkeeping programs out there. So whatever you're using, I bet if you're not using it fully, if you learn to, it would do exactly what you need it to do. If you don't have anything or absolutely hate what you're using, then I would definitely look into QuickBooks. I wanted to let you know that right now currently, and I say that as a seed because I think I'm getting ready to do some changes, so we'll see, is that when my time comes on my profit first time, I open up Trello and the checklist is there as a template. So it shows up for me on the 10th and 25th, and I have 2 separate checklists. They're very similar, but I do more on the 10th of the month than I do on the 25th of the month. So let's dive in. But before we do, I think you're going to want to follow along and look at this checklist with me. And so if you want to get access to the details of this checklist, which will be far more than I can cover in this episode, I want you to download my ultimate checklist to whip your bottom line into shape. And you can grab that over at theproductivityspecialist.com/102 download. Again, that's theproductivityspecialist.com/102 download. And then you can download it and just follow along as I go through the rest of this episode. So I seriously want you to take a moment and just go download that. And I am going to wait here for just a moment while you do that. Okay, I'm back and ready to dive into my checklist. Are you? Okay, so this is exactly what I do on the 10th of each month. The very first thing I do is I utilize a spreadsheet that's already pre-calculated with my budget allocations. And this goes hand in hand with the profit first. So I have one specific account where all the revenue money comes into my business. And then I have allocation goals, which is percentages. So I have X percentage go to taxes, X percentage going to profits, X percentage going to owner's pay, X percentage going to operating expenses. Those are the 4 places that I'm saving money to. And then based on my percentage. So if $1,000 came in and I was allocating 30% to operating, I would move $300 over. Okay. So I do the budget allocation and it tells me how much to transfer into each account. Then I jump online and I transfer all the funds. The next thing that I do is I clean out my profit first email folder. Now, actually, I don't clean it out. My job is that as all these electronic emails are coming into my world in my inbox, I just drag and drop it into a folder called Profit First. My assistant logs in once a month and pulls those and PDFs all the receipts and dumps them into the appropriate month that the expense was in. This is for auditing purposes only. So in the future, if I were to ever get audited, I have all my files backed up, PDF receipts that would match up with my expenses, right? Like the things that are showing up on my credit card or my bank statement. So that's a piece of this that I actually outsource. My job is just drag and drop and put it in the right place. The next thing that I do is I go through and I pay all my credit cards. Now, you might be thinking, Amber's got credit cards? That's juicy. Or maybe you don't think that. But for me, actually, it's actually a way to keep myself organized. So I have a business credit card that everything goes on, and it does a couple things. I don't have miscellaneous charges coming out everywhere from different accounts, or some in my checking account and then some on a credit card. Everything goes on a credit card. And then the second reason I use a credit card and that this gets paid off each time is because I'm accumulating points and I'm building my business's credit. When I first started my business, the credit card was in my name and I solely only used it for business, never personal. But as my business has grown, my business has its own credit. And so I have a credit card in my business name. Okay. Then the next thing that I'm doing is running payroll. And I do that through QuickBooks. It's just, a click of a button. It runs you through the process and I pay payroll. And then I jump in and I pay all outstanding taxes that are due. And this gets triggered throughout QuickBooks. It'll tell you, you owe for this and that. And again, it's all electronic. You follow the directions and then I hit electronic pay and it files my return, like my documents that have to do with that payroll tax, and also pays it. So what you'll hear is I have a checkbox of all the things that I need to do so I don't miss a step, but it took time to get it all set up the correct way. The next thing that I do is I download all of my statements. So from the credit card company, I download the statements and then I save them to that month's folder. And then I do the same for my bank accounts. Okay, so we're just downloading the electronic. Once upon a time, I had them mailed to me. We go paperless now, so everything gets downloaded. And then next, I am balancing the accounts. Now, this is where I think most of the hang up is like, what does that look like? Now, because I use QuickBooks and because QuickBooks is connected to my credit cards and bank accounts, the items that need to be reconciled, I'm balancing the account. I'm not reconciling yet. So those items are sitting there waiting for me to approve. And in QuickBooks, it gets smarter and smarter. So like when it sees Trello, it automatically knows exactly what account to tag that towards, right? So, and then when it sees, say, QuickBooks charge, it knows what line item to charge it to. So once you do the work the first time, it gets really smart. It knows where to put most Amazon orders. Now, it knows because of previously how you've categorized it. And with Amazon, sometimes it's not the right category because it depends on what you buy. Most of the time it's office supplies, but sometimes I'm buying a client gift and that should be categorized in a different line item on my profit and loss and expenses. So all you do is click a button and determine where it needs to go. It's really, really important, as Sarah said, that this is when you want your QuickBooks or whatever bookkeeping program to be set up correctly, because then as you're moving through it on a very quick basis, you do not need to put too much thought into it. You just know that it's going into the right area. Now, if you are manually entering expenses or line items off of your statements, whether that's a credit card, debit card, whatever, you are doing it wrong. Now, I very rarely tell somebody, or even you as the listener, that you're doing something wrong, but I need to tell you you're doing it wrong. There is technology and efficiencies. It is just way, way, way too much of a waste of time to manually be entering this in. It should be tied to your accounts and it sits there for your approval or editing so that you can balance all your accounts. Okay? Next on my list, so now I have accounted for every charge and expense and deposit that's come in on my accounts, both checking accounts and credit cards. So the next thing I'm going to do is reconcile my accounts. Reconciling on a regular basis is what allows you to catch your mistakes and make sure that the numbers that you're seeing on, say, your flash reports, or like if you're looking at, your profit and loss at a month or a quarter, you know that they're accurate because you're reconciling. The numbers are accurate. Maybe not the categories, but the numbers are accurate. That's what reconciling will help you do, okay? Which then brings me to the next item, which is to review your profit and loss. What I do is I run the profit and loss for the previous month that I am working on. So if it's the 10th, like today, okay, so let's just say it's April 10th, I am running the profit and loss for all of March. And I go line item by line item and I look at it and I see if it makes sense. Does that look, because sometimes you might have miscategorized something and you're like, wow, why is that expense so much? So then you can tap on it and it drills down and tells you exactly what got you to that number, right? So like, let's just say you have $879 in postage and you're like, I haven't sent postage out at all in March. Well, you click on it and it will tell you where did that come from. And if you find a mistake, you can reallocate it to the right account, which I think is really smart to do and stay on top of, because as your numbers get bigger and bigger, and if you're looking at a whole year at a glance, it's harder to see those little errors that may or may not be happening. So I click on everything, kind of just, glance over it and see the detail. And I make sure that it looks right. And once it's right, I've got information. Like I'm also looking at, well, what was my marketing expenses? What was my contractor expenses? What was my payroll expenses? How much profit? Where did my revenue come from? These are all questions that are being answered in one report, which is your profit and loss. So once I've made sure that there's no further errors or edits or anything like that, then I run a year-to-date P&L. And what that does is give me, so if I was running it on April 10th, it would give me everything. So I actually select it to be the close of the previous month. So I would run everything from January 1st to the end of March. And that gives me a year to date. What are my overall expenses? Same questions. What is my revenue? Where is it coming from? What's my profitability? Because this is all data that you're taking so that you can make decisions. When the next, opportunity comes up to maybe bring somebody on your team or work with a coach or do the next marketing thing, you'll know if you have the money to do that because you're keeping up with your, with your finances. Okay. Now, this entire process takes me 90 minutes. And that's when I'm reconciling, reviewing the P&L, and doing a year to date and asking myself those questions. 90 minutes. On the 25th of the month, I run through all of the first few checklist items here, all the way up to balancing my accounts. So I'm not reconciling. I'm not doing P&Ls or reports, because what I'm doing is just everything that came in from the 10th to the 25th over that, that time period right there, so that I have less to do when the 10th comes around. So I'm just staying on top of it. And so this is essentially my checklist, and it takes 90 minutes and 60 minutes. And at any given time, I can tell you what my revenue is. I can tell you what outstanding invoices I have, what's coming in as accounts receivable. What else do I know? I can see trends, right? If you wait 2 years or a year, or maybe it's April and you're trying to do all of the previous years, it's very hard to see trends, and it's even harder to make tweaks and shifts when it's already happened, right? Knowing these numbers allows me to meet with Sarah at the end of Q3 and the end of, almost the end of Q4. So like in November maybe, and say, do I need any additional expenses in my business? What are my options? Should I be taking more money out as the owner? What needs to happen to stay on our strategic plan to keep my, tax liability as low as possible? Okay, so I hope you followed along. And what I want you to do is, while you did print out or download my checklist, I want you to make it your own. And what you noticed was it's not complicated. It's quite simple, and it's the things that have done consistently compounded over time will reclaim time and a heck of a lot stress for paying for it today. So you're making the investments today for in the future, right? So while you may have been, preoccupied and not able to focus on high value activities because the only thing you could think of was doing your taxes or how much you owed on your taxes, That's not something that I felt. And I want that for you. And I think that it is as easy as getting caught up. That's project number one. Once you're caught up, then you're going to keep this consistency. Which brings me to what happens if you're just completely behind right now, okay? So the very first thing you're going to need to do is put in the time on your calendar to get yourself caught up, or maybe outsource your bookkeeping because it makes more sense to have somebody catch you up, but you're willing to maintain it after that. Or perhaps you've already put in the work this last couple weeks or month, and you're caught up to the end of 2018. So what that means is by the time you're listening to this episode, you may only have 3 months that you need to play catch up on, which I think is absolutely possible to put in this new system, get things in order, and then you're going to close out 2019 solid. Like you'll be tapping your CPA on the shoulder at the beginning of next year saying, I'm ready. Okay. So I hope my process and pulling back the curtains on my checklist has really, really been beneficial. I want you to go into next tax season and the one after that and the one after that saying, I got this. I want it to be something that you look forward to and not something that you dread. Because whether you dread it or look forward to it, it's still going to happen. Like it doesn't go away. You will always pay taxes. April 15th will come and go every single year. So why not create a process that sets you up for success and less stress so that you do not need to experience that any longer for yourself? Okay, so if you delayed and you're like, let me see what she was talking about with this checklist. Again, the checklist will be far more detailed than I covered in today's episode. But if you still want to go get it, you can download the ultimate checklist to whip your bottom line into shape at theproductivityspecialist.com/102 download. Okay, I have loved having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk. But I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. If you were running on the treadmill, out for a hike, driving down the road, whatever you were doing, listening to this episode, shaking your head like, yes, that's me. Yes, I can do that. I want you to take action. And maybe you are already doing, 7 of the things on the checklist, but one thing keeps falling through the cracks. Then create your ultimate checklist for you that's going to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and you don't have this annual huge project that is taking away from your resources and time that can otherwise be invested in something else. I want you to take action. Okay, and I would love to send a special thank you out to Warren Ray, who recently said, amazed at the practical and useful info I was able to pull from the first few episodes. Subscribe right away. Okay, so Warren, thank you so much. And that was so great of you to leave a review after just a few episodes that you found valuable. If you have found this podcast valuable, I'm going to ask 3 things of you. The first is, if it was valuable, that means you took action on something you learned. So invest in yourself. Number 2, if you're willing to leave me a review, I would love to hear some feedback and insights of your experience with Productivity Straight Talk. And 3 is share it with someone else that you think will find it valuable. That is truly the best gift, is to share something that will bring value to other people's lives and businesses. So if you're not already sharing Productivity Straight Talk, I encourage you to do so. So that's my straight talk for you today. And until next time, have a productive week.